Letters from Spain. Letter 19. Spanish eating culture. Hello. It's been pretty hard for me to motivate myself to do this podcast lately, now that everything in the whole world, and especially in Spain, is just so crazy. I mean, after all, this podcast is about life in Spain. And life in Spain has basically come to a complete stop thanks to the coronavirus. The streets are empty, the cafes are closed, everyone is inside, just like it is in New York, just like it is in France, just like it is in everywhere else, even in India now. So, even here in Spain, we're not even allowed to go on walks or exercise, in the open air, unlike people in most other countries. So it's a pretty harsh lockdown. And so I can't say I've seen a lot of Spanish life lately. Well, all this isolation has given me a lot of time to think. And, as the lockdowns are being carried out all over the world, it is creating the conditions for sort of an interesting cultural comparison, since every culture is sort of going through the same thing at the same time. You get a little bit of a miniature experiment. And the way people are going to react to the measures that the government takes is partly conditioned by culture, I think. But to be honest, I've been pretty surprised at how Spain has been reacting to the lockdown. In my experience, Spanish people are being very cooperative with the new restrictions on movement and restrictions on all the things you can do. The streets are mostly empty, and I honestly haven't really seen any disobedience with my own eyes. And it's bringing out a sense of solidarity in Spanish culture that I haven't seen before. Everyone seems willing to do their part. And every night at 8 p.m., all the people have been gathering on their balconies to cheer for the doctors and the nurses. And some people are even cheering for the police. Personally, I doubt that Americans are going to adjust so easily to the lockdown. Although, Spain and America, they're both Western cultures, I think Americans in general are more concerned with notions of freedom and rights than people are in Spain. Spain is a younger democracy after all. And also, I doubt that many Americans will be comfortable with having police cars patrol their neighborhoods and giving out big fines to anyone disobeying the orders. It makes me feel a little weird to see it in my own neighborhood in Spain as I look down from my balcony, these empty streets patrolled by police cars. It's not something that makes you feel particularly comfortable. But, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this will bring out a sense of cooperation and solidarity in America too. Maybe people will accept the measures as necessary. After all, I didn't predict Spanish people, who really love going outside and being social. I didn't think they would adjust so easily to being inside. So far, last time I checked, about 1,000 people in the country have been arrested for disobeying the lockdown orders, and probably a lot more than that have been given fines. But I think on the whole, there's been a heck of a lot more cooperation than disobedience. Well, now that we're seeing Spain and Italy hit so hard by this new disease, it does make me wonder if culture has something to do with this. In this podcast, I've repeatedly talked about how Spanish people, they love proximity. And that's true on every level. They love high-density living. They like getting real close when they talk to each other. They like being in crowded bars. Spanish people, they just want to be close to each other. And physical contact is a lot more permissible here. Kissing, handshaking, more is done ritualistically. You got to kiss everyone. Another interesting thing to consider is that in Spain there's a lot of cross-generational contact. As in, lots of people who are in their 20s still live with their parents. And Spanish people also, they keep in very close touch with their elderly parents and with their grandparents. They visit them quite a lot, often going every other weekend. So all these aspects of Spanish culture, which are quite beautiful, in my opinion, also may have made them more susceptible to the coronavirus. And the same might be true in Italy. Well, anyway, in this podcast, I don't want to speculate about the virus. Everyone is talking about the virus all the time. Rather, I want to pay homage to one of my favorite aspects of Spanish culture, which is the eating culture. And this is one of the things from my daily life that I'm really missing nowadays. And I really hope we could beat this virus as quickly as possible so we could get back to the good life of eating and drinking. What we all love. So there are some obvious differences between Spanish and American eating cultures. The most obvious is probably just the schedule. In Spain, you eat late. Typical time for lunch is between 2 and 3 p.m. And for dinner, it can be from 9 at night all the way to 11. And another difference is the quantity of food consumed in each meal. In America, we have big breakfasts, medium-sized lunches, and big dinners. In Spain, breakfasts are pretty light normally, and lunch is very big, and then dinner is sort of medium. So, in general, portions in Spain, though, are just smaller than they are in the United States, although I guess that's not saying much. To me, the most important differences in the eating cultures are not the times, though. They're not the times or the portions. It's the restaurant and the bar culture. In my opinion, and probably not a lot of people will agree with this if they're from other countries, but in my opinion, I think Spain has a claim to having the world's greatest bar culture, and I think this for a few reasons. One reason is that there are just so many bars and restaurants. Spanish people love being in public, and the number of eating establishments reflects that. Madrid, for example, has over 15,000 bars and restaurants, which translates to one restaurant or bar for every 21 residents. That means that literally everyone in the entire city could go to a bar or restaurant at the same time, and there would be enough space. And, the city basically does do that. On any given hour or on any given day, there are tons of people sitting in bars and cafes and restaurants. It's just a way of life. And because eating establishments are so common and so fundamental to Spanish life, they have a very aesthetic as they do in America. In America, we go to restaurants or bars on weekends, on holidays, for special occasions, birthdays, and so on. For this reason, in America, we put more effort into creating a special ambiance in a restaurant, with music, with decoration. They're fancy. Now, many bars and restaurants in Madrid are just not like that. They're bare-boned. There are no frills. There's a popular website about Madrid bars called No Frills Madrid. They're just for hanging out, And a big advantage is that oftentimes there's no music or the music is very low, right? So you could have a decent conversation, unlike in an American bar where you have to shout into your neighbor's ear. And also the lights are not dimmed, so you could actually see the people around you. That's a plus. So the ambiance is a lot more like your own living room. Another big difference is the lack of a tipping culture. I think a lot of Americans, or most Americans, they don't really realize how much tipping affects our eating experience. Aside from the simple fact of paying and calculating a tip, which I think is pretty annoying now that I'm not doing it. Whenever I go back to America, I have to do math problems every time I go to a restaurant. And apart from all that, tipping has a big effect on the entire experience, Waiters in America are motivated to be ingratiating, accommodating, and fast. They want you to be in and out as fast as comfortably possible because more people translates into more money for them directly. And, they'll bend over backwards to give you good service. Good and fast service. In Spain, it's really not like that at all. In most places, they don't care if you stay there all night. And getting the attention of a Spanish waiter is famously difficult. They don't have to pretend to love you or even like you. They're there to do their job. And personally, on the whole, I think it's a lot better. I think it's better because I don't like being rushed out of restaurants. And I think this whole ritual in America of us deciding how much a waiter deserves is demeaning. I think waiters should just be paid a living wage so they could do their jobs just like everyone else, and they don't have to be actors too and pretend to love it and pretend that you're the center of the universe, right? In an American restaurant, I can never relax because of the pressure that I feel to finish. The constant questions: would you like anything else? Is everything all right? Are you enjoying the food? In a Spanish restaurant, you can just be as comfortable as you want. It's like being in your own living room. Another interesting difference between Spanish and American eating establishments is that Spanish bars and restaurants can be quite generic. What I mean is that, in America, eating out is a special experience, and we expect each restaurant to have something special, something that sets it apart. In Spain, where eating out is as common as eating in, restaurants can be pretty standard, And I like this a lot because you always know what there is and what you can get no matter where you are. It makes ordering a lot easier. For example, you don't need to specify the beer you want in Spanish bars. You just say, a beer. The beer is standard, okay? All you need to specify is how much beer you want. Do you want a big glass or a little glass? Again, you don't even need to choose the wine from an elaborate wine menu. You just order red or white wine and they'll give you the standard wine. And I mean, maybe if you're a connoisseur, you don't like this, but I think it's a relief not to have to make so many choices. You're not there to have a gustatory experience. You're there to drink some wine with your friends. And the point is not the wine. The point is being there with your friends. Anyway, the menu in Spanish restaurants also has this generic quality. They can be pretty similar to one another. And, that's because in Spain, the eating culture is much more based on a national tradition than it is in America. In America, what is our national tradition of eating? I hardly have any idea. But in Spain, they have a tradition. They're national dishes, and that's what everyone eats most of the time. What sets a restaurant apart is usually not having anything special on the menu, since most of the restaurants have the same thing, but really just the quality of a typical Spanish dish. And because Spanish dishes are typically so simple, it takes a little while to understand what makes a good one and what makes a bad one, Like one place might have really good paella, one place might have really good tortilla, and you don't know what a good or bad tortilla is unless you've had like 20 or 50 or 100 tortillas, you need to eat a lot of it, and then once you get the taste of it, once you get the taste of the subtle differences, which is what Spanish food is all about, it's about subtle differences, as I've talked about. And once you get that taste, you realize it's worthwhile looking for a good tortilla, man. It's worth it. So for all these reasons, I think Spanish eating culture is just fantastic. I love being able to go to a bar and feel at home. I love the feeling of being packed into a bar, even though I hated it at first, but of being packed into a bar and just feeling like the whole community is there, right there, just having a good time with you. And I really just think this is one of the best parts of Spanish culture. Another big thing about going to a restaurant, by the way, is that it's cheap compared to America. You can go to a restaurant pretty much every day and you won't go bankrupt. So I think I think it's a beautiful part of Spanish life. I think it's an important and even a fundamental part of Spanish life, going out to eat. And I really just hope we can get back to it as much as possible. I loved it. I loved it before this crisis, but now that I have to eat all my meals at home, it's sad. I mean, I miss it. So you could consider this my homage, my tribute to the glorious tradition of Spanish eating culture. Thank you.